Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Overwatch Weekly. Have a decent number of stories to cover this week, so we're going to jump right into that with the most recent patch. We finally got a patch, patch 1.41.0.0, and it was released yesterday. The highlights of it, of course, the big one being Halloween Terror 2019, but we're going to talk about that in a little bit. Also, some other updates to general updates. The arcade has been expanded to 7 cards to better handle its increasing variety of game modes. The Season 2 of competitive 3v3 lockout elimination has begun. The BlizzCon skins, which we talked about in the past, were announced. So they just put them in the patch notes here, but of course, there is the Illidan, Genji, and the Tyrande Symmetra skins that I talked about in the past. I believe that was 2 weeks ago or last week. I don't remember exactly when. But the big thing, of course, is the hero updates. And we've got a decent number of them. So, D.Va's defense matrix regeneration rate was increased from 12.5% to 16% per second. And the delay before regeneration begins was lowered from 1 second to 0.75 seconds. Versus protective barrier cooldown was increased from 9 to 10 seconds, which I think is a great change. I think they need to change her halt, but that's something we'll get to in the future. Roadhog's scrap gun ammunition was increased from 5 to 6. Sigma's kinetic grasp no longer blocks chain hook and whip shot. Gravitic Flux's high gravity effect duration is reduced from 1.9 to 0.9 seconds. And the experimental barrier regeneration rate was reduced from 175 to 150 per second, and it now has a 1 second cooldown after recalling the barrier, and the initial 0.2 second cast time was removed. So, some big changes to the 2 tanks that are really dominant in this meta in Orisa and Sigma. Winston's barrier projector duration was increased from 6 to 9 seconds, and the health was increased from 600 to 700. That's pretty good. Winston's not that great right now, so that'll maybe help him out be a little bit better. Baptiste's immortality field health was decreased from 250 to 200, which is a pretty good change. Lucio's crossfade speed boosts effect was increased from 20% to 25%. Amp It Up's speed boosts amplification was increased from 50% to 60%, and Wall Ride speed buffer was reduced from 40% to 30%. So this is a bit of a kind of a redo of when they nerfed his speed when Goat's was still around, but now they're kind of changing it a little bit and making it a little bit better. Mercy's Valkyrie, the extra beams created by Valkyrie now ignore enemy barriers. It's a pretty big change, and that's really nice. Moira's Biotic Grasp self-healing is reduced from 30 to 20 health per second because she's a little too good in 1v1 situations. Doomfist's Rocket Punch time to reach max charge is increased from 1 to 1.4 seconds, and the shield health gain from the best defense was reduced from 35 to 30 per hit. Sombra's Translocator cooldown was increased from 4 to 6 seconds, and the cooldown now begins immediately upon deploying the beacon or if it is killed by an enemy. If you destroy it yourself, it won't have a cooldown, only if it's destroyed or right after you throw it. Symmetra's Photon Barrier duration was reduced from 15 to 12 seconds, and the health was reduced from 5,000 to 4,000. The Sentry Turret damage per second was reduced from 50 to 40, and the Photon Projector, players impacted by the primary fire beam should now hear a louder impact sound. And finally, Tracer's Pulse Pistol's damage fall-off now starts at 13 meters, up from 10. Those are all the hero changes, but as I mentioned, we're going to talk a little bit about Halloween Terror. If you want to see all of the unlockable items, I made a video on it yesterday, so you can check that out. But there are some things about Halloween Terror this year that are different from past years, obviously, beyond just the new skins and cosmetics. There is also the weekly challenges, like what we saw with the Summer Games event, where there's 3 weekly challenges, and if you win 9 matches in the week, you get some some items. So there's the Junkrat one, where you get the Inferno Junkrat skin, and you get the player icon, the spray, and then the Junkrat skin. Week 2, it is Vampire Baptiste, so you'll get Vampire player icon at 3 wins, the Vampire spray at 6 wins, and then the Vampire skin at 9 wins. And then the big one, the fun one, is the Sombra Demon Hunter skin, which you may remember from BlizzCon of 2018. The skin was made available, but we haven't been able to get it until now if you didn't go to BlizzCon. So if you win 3 games, this is the week 3, so it's the week from October 29th through November 4th. Week 2 is October 22nd through October 28th, and Junkrat is 15th through 21st of October. The Sombra one, 3 games you get the Demon Hunter player icon, 6 games you get the Demon Hunter spray, 9 games you get the Demon Hunter Sombra skin. If you want to check out any of these unlockables or whatnot, like I said, I have a video in the description, or just follow the link to the Halloween Terror page, and you will see it. Alright, the next story that we have is that this past weekend, we saw the Contenders Gauntlet take place, and we not only saw it take place, we have a winner now, and it was Element Mystic. The number 2 seeded team from Korea. They beat Atlanta Academy in the finals 4-1 to take the Gauntlet trophy. And I personally thought that Runaway would be the team to win it. Runaway got pretty much blitzed by Element Mystic and then got absolutely crushed. I mean, absolutely crushed by Atlanta Academy. And then Element Mystic was able to pretty easily beat Atlanta Academy. It wasn't really much of a series. So if you want to read some more about the Gauntlet, I have a link in the description about it. But I want to focus on a different Contender story, and that is the story surrounding the 2020 Contenders format. Because Contenders in 2020 is going to be different. So the first thing that they're changing, right? We're going to go through this, is they're changing the way the format is, and that's the big change, right? Now, they will be splitting the region into 2 conferences in a way you'll probably recognize, which is something they've already done. So they'll have Atlantic, which will be Europe, North America, South America. I don't know if they're still going to have NA East, NA West, or if it's just going to be one North American region. Then they're going to have Pacific, Australia, China, Korea, Pacific, so no new regions added. They're also going to be moving away from the traditional league structure and go to a bi-weekly tournament series where teams will be able to accumulate points that will ultimately qualify them into a regional playoff series. We will be moving Contenders Trials to a bi-weekly cycle as well to give more opportunities for open division teams to break through. But first, let's do a transition. So what they say here for how they're going to transition to this bi-weekly tournament style, which I'll get into that a little more in a second here. In early 2020, we will invite all 2019 Season 2 Contenders teams to a preliminary double elimination tournament, which will determine seeding into the new system. The top 4 will receive buys into their region's first Contenders tournament quarterfinals as seeds 1 through 4, and the bottom 4 will receive buys into their region's first Contenders Trials tournament as seeds 1 through 4. This will only need to be played out once, as it's simply a transitional tournament to seed fairly into the 2020 structure. Now we get to the weird part. So what will a season in 2020 look like? So, Phase 1, a season will first begin with open division for each region, open to all players of all skill levels, not including Contenders players, or Overwatch League players, obviously. This will run for 7 weeks, 6 weeks of Swiss into a week of playoffs to produce the top 8 teams that will compete in Contenders Trials. So the top 4 from Open Division will move into the Contenders Trials because the bottom 4 from the previous season of Contenders are already going to be in it. Or I guess actually no, technically it is 8 because there's 12 teams in Contenders Trials. So the top 8 from Open Division will move into this single elimination tournament. So then Contenders Trials will take place over 1 week, where 12 teams, the bottom 4 from Contenders and the top 8 from Open Division, will compete in a single elimination bracket. So you have this bracket where you have all 12 teams competing. And then you have the top 8 advance to contenders. So if you win a game in contenders trials, you move on to contenders, and then you just play for seeding at that point in time. Then after this contenders trials tournament, you move into the bi-weekly contenders tournaments, the normal contenders tournaments, right? So this is what they call phase 3, and this is where the first of the contenders bi-weekly tournaments will take place, alternating week to week between the Atlantic and Pacific divisions. 12 teams, the top 4 contenders teams and top 8 contenders trials teams, will compete in a single elimination bracket. This is where points will be awarded for the region's playoffs. The top 4 teams will retain their auto qualification into the next contenders tournament, which will take place 2 weeks later, while the bottom 8 will compete in contenders trials the following week. Now, something that's not clear to me, just based on the way it's working, is how many regions are involved in these. Is it 12 NA teams, or is it 12 teams from Atlantic? I think it's supposed to be 12 NA teams, but because it would make no sense if they didn't have these are divisions, not conferences, so that's my guess, is it's just that. So then after this contenders 12-team contenders tournament, where the bottom 8 of course return to contenders trials for the following week, you basically have something where you repeat the contenders trials tournament and the contenders tournament, and you keep doing that until you just repeat that, I guess, once. Then that constitutes a season of contenders. So that would be like one season, whatever it is. And then you get to another season after that. So phase 5s, they repeat phases 1 through 4. And then the top 8 teams with the most points through these 2 tournaments. Because keep in mind, right, they alternate between Atlantic and Pacific. So 1 week will be Atlantic, next week will be Pacific. Then they do another tournament and another tournament. So the top 8 teams in points at that point in time will secure a spot in their regional playoffs, which is, I believe, the Atlantic and Pacific playoffs. And then those top 8 teams will compete in a double elimination regional playoff tournament to determine their region's contenders champion. So I guess it is just region. So it's not Atlantic Pacific. And then there will be 2 full season contenders in 2020, producing 2 championship winning teams per region. So I guess you do two contenders bi-weekly tournaments, and then you have your regional playoffs. So that's my bad of misunderstanding. But it's kind of confusing. It's very confusing to understand the way this season will work, and it's something we'll have to see in practice. They also confirmed that Showdowns and the Contenders Gauntlet will be returning in 2020, but they'll have more information at a later date. I highly recommend you read through this yourself. It's a very complicated system. I don't really like it. I've never been a huge Contenders fan. I haven't really watched a lot of Contenders, but this doesn't seem like the best way to go about it, but that's what they're choosing. Like I said, link in the description if you want to read more about it. It's very weird and very confusing, and I think they probably should have just stuck with a normal system like what they had been doing, but that's just me. The final thing I want to talk about is an update to the Hearthstone situation that I talked about in last week's video. And J. Allen Brack, the president of Blizzard Entertainment, released a statement. And it's a pretty long statement, so I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'm going to focus on some of the big things about it. If you somehow don't know what the Hearthstone situation is, there's a link in the description to last week's video where I talked a little bit about it, and I'll have that in the cards as well. But there's a lot of stuff to know about it. It's a very, very, very complicated political situation. But the TLDR of the whole thing is Blizzard suspended a Hearthstone player and 2 casters for a year, and took away the player who's Blitzchung. They took his earnings away because he said on stream, "Free Hong Kong, revolution of our age," and they said that violates their rule about politics and whatnot, but people got upset. So, that's kind of the situation they're in. So last week, late last week, Friday, Jalen Brack put out a statement, and he basically opens up by saying that they want to bring the world together through epic entertainment, and they have values that apply, which are think globally, lead responsibly, and importantly, every voice matters. And those are the kinds of things that they were getting criticized for, that those things were not being considered when they made this decision about Blitzchung. And he said the actions that we took over the weekend are causing people to question if we are still committed to these values. We absolutely are, and I will explain. He says esports exists to create opportunities for players around the world from different cultures and from different backgrounds to come together to compete and to share their passion for gaming. It is extremely important to us to protect these channels and the purpose they serve to bring the world together through epic entertainment, celebrate our players, and build diverse and inclusive communities. And then he says as to how these values apply in this case, he says, our official esports tournament broadcast was used as a platform for a winner of the event to share his views with the world. And then he says, we interview competitors who are at the top of their craft to share how they feel. We want to experience that moment with them. Hearing their excitement is a powerful way to bring us together. Over the weekend, Blitzchung used his segment to make a statement about the situation in Hong Kong in violation of rules he acknowledged and understood, and this is why we took action. Every voice matters, and we strongly encourage everyone in our community to share their viewpoints in the many places available to express themselves. However, the official broadcast needs to be about the tournament and to be a place where all are welcome. In support of that, we want to keep the official channels focused on the game. Okay. Then on the shoutcasters, he said we hire shoutcasters to amplify the excitement of the game, they elevate the watchability, and help the esports viewing experiences stay focused on the tournament and our amazing players. And then that's but like doesn't go into anything about why they got suspended. And then third were actions based on the content of the message. And the response there is part of thinking globally, leading responsibly, and every voice matters is recognizing that we have players and fans in almost every country in the world. Our goal is to help players connect in areas of commonality, like their passion for our games, and create a sense of shared community. Specific views expressed by Blitzchung were not a factor in the decision we made. I want to be clear, our relationships in China had no influence on our decision. We have these rules to keep the focus on the game and on the tournament to the benefit of a global audience, and that was the only consideration in the actions we took. If this had been the opposing viewpoint delivered in the same divisive and deliberate way, we would have felt and acted the same. Which I don't know if I believe that, because it seems pretty clear that they are going to do whatever they can to stay on China's good side. And that's why I'm a little suspicious of them saying that, because I don't necessarily believe it. But here is kind of the big thing, the final thing. What could Blizzard have done better, and where do we go from here? So this is the big part of this statement. Over the past few days, many players, casters, esports fans, and employees have expressed concerns about how we determine the penalties. We had a chance to pause, to listen to our community, and to reflect on what we could have done better. In hindsight, our process wasn't adequate, and we reacted too quickly. We want to ensure that we maintain a safe and inclusive environment for all our players, and that our rules and processes are clear. All of this in service of another important value: play nice, play fair. In the tournament itself, Blitzchung played fair. We now believe he should receive his prizing. We understand that for some this is not about the prize, and perhaps for others it is disrespectful to even discuss it. That is not our intention. The playing fair also includes appropriate pre- and post-match conduct, especially when a player accepts recognition for winning in a broadcast. When we think about the suspension, 6 months for Blitzchung is more appropriate, after which time he can compete in the Hearthstone Pro Circuit again if he so chooses. There is a consequence for taking the conversation away from the purpose of the event and disrupting or derailing the broadcast. With regard to the casters, remember their purpose is to keep the event focused on the tournament. That didn't happen here, and we are setting their suspension to 6 months as well. Moving forward, we will continue to apply tournament rules to ensure our official broadcasts remain focused on the game, and we are not a platform for divisive social or political views. So that's pretty much how it ends. There's a couple other things there, but I want to just take a little time to kind of explain my thoughts on the whole situation. Because I don't really think that it makes sense that they're saying, hey, we think that what we did was wrong based on what we have, and that they said that we took too quick of a reaction. I think it was too quick of a reaction because they were essentially forced into making an immediate response. Because to my knowledge, this was like the big tournament. I don't know when there's another big tournament. I don't think there's another one for a little bit of time. And I think they were kind of forced into action early, and then when people got upset, they're like, okay, well, let's change, and we'll make it so things aren't as much of a problem. But I find it hard to believe that China did not play a role in the decision they made. I just can't see Blizzard making a decision like that purely out of their own accord. I don't think there's an issue with punishing them. I think a lot of people. I think the issue that a lot of people have is that they look at it as just like it wasn't something that was in the rules. It's in the rules. And I think that I don't think you should be asking players, or I don't think you should be allowing players to do such political things on a live stream about esports. That's my personal opinion on it. But I also think that when they had suspended him for a year, that I think 6 months is even still too much. And when they stripped him of his prize money, I think that was way too much. So I'm glad he's getting his prize money back, because I think that ultimately should never have been taken away from him. I think that was the thing over the line. But at the end of the day, I think Blizzard has the right to do what they did. I don't think people are disagreeing with that. I don't have a particular problem with them saying we don't want people to share political views on our streams. I don't think that the best course of action was let's suspend people for 12 months or even 6 months. I think suspension was unnecessary. I think if you're going to suspend them, maybe like not 6 months, or a fine or something. I don't really think that you should be suspended for a year and stripped of prize money because you do something like this. And obviously they've changed their decision, and they're giving him the money back, and they're not going to the full 12 months. And I've said that several times now, but I think it's important to realize that Blizzard has to basically make a decision in this situation of either we show support despite it violating our rules, and then set a precedent that you can say whatever you want and not get in trouble, or we enforce our rules knowing that people are going to be upset. And that's what they ended up going with, which I think was probably in the long run their best decision, because things are very clear and set in stone, and they don't have the issues of like, well, I talked about this and I got in trouble, or this person talked about this in the past and got in trouble. Why didn't this person get in trouble? But it's because of what the content of what he said is so divisive that this kind of problem came into being. That's my opinion on it, at least. You may disagree, you may not. I don't know. I'm not you, so I don't really know. But to me, that's what it comes down to, is they look at this situation and they say, we have to do something. Initial reaction was way too harsh. I think this one's still too harsh, but him getting his prize money back, to me, is the most important thing. I think that was the thing he should have never lost. And I know a lot of people, the thing is about the message. It's about what the signal that you're showing and the signal that you're presenting. You just got to accept it. And in a lot of cases, like, China's very powerful. They have a lot of influence around the world. This is the kind of thing you're going to see happening everywhere now. So that's really all there is to it. We see with the NBA. NBA is having a huge problem with it. So that's all there is to it, really. I don't think that this situation is close to being over. I think there will be a lot more fallout from this, but I think that their thing was, we got to make a statement. We have to, if we're going to make changes, we got to make those changes. sooner rather than later, because BlizzCon comes up here in a few weeks. And I think that their hope is that BlizzCon will be able to be successful and will be able to distract people from what has been going on. But there's no way for sure for us to be able to tell until we get closer. But that is everything I have for you this week. Let me know your thoughts on anything in the comment down below. And if you enjoyed, consider liking and subscribing. Check out the playlist to watch more Overwatch Weekly videos. But I am going to get out of here. So thank you so much once again. And I'll see you all next time. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.